What's going on, everybody? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about our new favorite MCU movie, Thunderbolts. I truly believe that it's the best film since Endgame, and some people will say that's a low bar, some people say that's a high bar, but I think I think it was absolutely fantastic. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about it was the characterization. So quickly, from an English major's point of view, I thought the characterization was really good because everybody served their purpose. And I know that sounds broad, but the Thunderbolts to me aren't designed to be stereotypical heroes, even though they are heroes. To me, they're more anti-heroes. And every one of these characters, if you've watched the MCU, and I recommend that you watch the MCU in full prior to watching the movie because you'll understand the characters a lot more. It's almost like entering a new chapter if you don't. And you probably should just watch everything to understand the conceptions of the characters, what the motivations are, how they all connect with each other. Because if you watch Thunderbolts and you are trying to find out who the Winter Soldier is, and you've never watched any of the Captain America movies, it's going to be a little difficult for you to connect with it. And same thing with, Taskmaster and John Walker. You need to watch the shows as well. So just a little disclaimer there. But the characterization was really well done because these characters are very flawed. They've murdered people. They've, annihilated things. So they're not full on heroes. They're not the Sam Wilsons of the world. They're not the Thors of the world. They're not the Tony Starks, even though he passed on in Endgame. They're not the Avengers. And I know they're called the New Avengers later on, which I don't personally agree with. I think they should just be the Thunderbolts because to me, the Avengers are just heroes and the Thunderbolts are anti-heroes. So I wanted to put that out there, but the movie itself was great. And the character portrayal to me that stood out the most, it wasn't Florence Pugh as the White Widow. It was not John Walker. It was not even the Winter Soldier, even though he's one of my probably top 5 favorite Marvel characters. To me, it was Bob, aka Sentry in the Void. I think this was a mental health movie. I really do. Even though Marvel is designed for comic relief and also designed for everybody of all ages for entertainment value, this to me was a message about mental health, especially in today's day and age, even in this decade. What I liked about it was they showed Bob to have power, but Bob also had a large sense of vulnerability. And Bob is an interesting character because I've never ventured much into Sentry. And even for Thunderbolts comics, I haven't ventured much into, which I think I should a little bit. But his portrayal to me stood out because Bob was almost like a product of the system in a way. And a lot of people who suffer from mental health issues, they get taken advantage of. And their vulnerabilities and their strengths are kind of put at a middle ground. And the one common denominator that every one of these characters had was they had some sort of mental health crises prior. The Winter Soldier, not as much in the movie, but if you've watched Captain America, the First Avenger, and the Winter Soldier, and Civil War, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because Bucky's rise back to heroism is a huge emotional struggle for him. And also, too, with, Florence Pugh as the White Widow, at the beginning of the movie, they really, really highlight her inner turmoil, even though for her they use a little more comedy. Even the Red Guardian, he's mostly comic relief, but he goes through his own crises as well, with a fractured relationship with his daughter and things in that nature. And what I like that the movie did is they showed comedy in a way that makes it disguise as mental health. And what I mean by that is a lot of people who suffer from mental health issues, they try to use comedy to disguise their own bereavement. And that's what I think the Red Guardian does, and I think that's also what the White Widow does, aka Florence Pugh, when she's, doing the things that she's doing and she's trying to cope and she's getting physical, but at the same time she's trying to cope with her own emotions. That's a little juxtaposition that I think is really, really well done in the movie. But back to Sentry, I thought he was really well done because like I said, a lot of people with mental health problems, they get taken advantage of. And New Rockstars does a really good job at talking about the characterization of Sentry. And that was something actually I was listening to when I was on the Stairmaster a couple days ago. And they did a great job at analyzing the whole movie. And so anybody who is watching Thunderbolts, I recommend watching New Rockstars afterward to get a breakdown. However, with Sentry, the Void itself, I think, is just a main character on its own. And they kind of play with schizophrenia, which I think is really well done. But I don't think that Bob as a character is just schizophrenic. I think there's traits of schizophrenia, but also too there's a lot of different mental health disorders where you can experience delirium and delusions and even different personalities. There's multiple personality disorder, borderline personality, even bipolar disorder to an extent. But I think Bob's portrayal characterized a message to the world today. And it shows the effects that mental health has on someone within a society. And society a lot of times wants to enclose emotional factors. And I think that enclosure is a huge thing that Bob goes through. Because we can see even through his interactions with John Walker and his interactions with the White Widow and his interactions with the Winter Soldier, we can see even with everybody really that there's a social awkwardness there, and it's not just because of his mental health, it's because of anxiety. And I know anxiety is under the mental health realm, but when we're talking mental health in this instance, we're talking about more severe diagnoses. So social awkwardness comes with the mental health, and you can see in his interactions that it's very difficult for him to cope with things, and it's very difficult for him to have a logical understanding of exactly the actions that he has committed, especially as the Void. And to me, the Void and the vacancy involved with it is a depiction of society when society is crumbling from a mental health point of view. Because there are times that I think everybody in the world has that emptiness inside. And there is a void. I think there's an internal void within all of us, in our minds, our souls, spirit, whatever you believe, where there's an emptiness, but at the same time with that emptiness, you feel everything. So again, that's a paradox. And to me, that's what Sentry in the Void is. There's a really fine line between his personality, Bob's personality, that is. And I think that if you can look at the movie as a division, and as a division of what someone wants to be and what someone currently is, I think that's how I would portray Bob. Because Bob aspires to do good. But when society labels a void and labels a mental health crisis as a form of negativity that's acted upon, it's very hard to make yourself heroic. And I think that's what Bob really, really struggles with. Because we can see even towards the end of the movie, when he's feuding with himself, Bob does the right thing and Bob wants to do the right thing. So even with his altered state, his mind goes to good right away. And it's really hard for people with mental health issues to always go to good, because sometimes their conceptions of good are different than what someone else's conceptions are going to be. And it's hard to justify that, especially when you're on the outside looking in. So that's what I really liked about Thunderbolts. And I really think the main message is a mental health movie, because everybody, doesn't matter what age we are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100. In today's world, we are all going through a mental health dilemma, and it's just about how open you are with it. Because people will observe it and people will see it. Not everybody may tell you, but you don't always realize what you're going through either. And a lot of times, Sentry doesn't, Bob doesn't. And when he ensues all this carnage, when he's the Void, what happens is he gets asked and he doesn't really remember anything. And that's because emptiness can blind rage. And when you are schizophrenic, borderline personality, you can sometimes develop an alter ego where all you feel is blind rage, and it's blind rage to the outside audience. But a lot of people with these mental health crises, they actually know what the rage is. It's just they have a very difficult time communicating it, so they do it through physicality, through yelling, and then that's a sense of delirium, and eventually they don't remember it, and that's scary, but also very true. So I think the movie is very reality based, and let me know what you guys think of that, because I maybe just think I may be thinking of this a completely different way, but I think that Thunderbolts was a mental health message for everybody. And I might do more elaborating on the movie because I think I'm gonna go see it again. I really enjoyed it, and let me know what you guys think. So this is just a little precursor to what I'd like to analyze going forward. And most of all, don't forget, hit that subscribe button.